Again, warm welcome to all of our attendees. We just want to start off by giving you the tips to continually prevent COVID-19. We know that we are pretty much out of disaster, state of disaster here in SA, and we just want to encourage you to continue to adhere to these steps, even though it's about COVID-19 and probably, you're tired of hearing about this. Just in general, good health and safety practices or good hygiene practices are still very important in health and safety. And so we spoke about this before COVID-19. We'll continue to speak about it even when COVID-19 eventually starts dying out in the future. Washing our hands regularly is very good. Using hand sanitizer if possible. If you don't have soap or water with you, don't touch your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Adhering to social distancing by avoiding contact with people who are sick. Covering your cough or sneeze with a flexed elbow. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces. And if you can, do your part to get vaccinated. So we'd like to welcome you then to this Toolbox Talk this morning. Obviously for April, we've got a few things that we do want to discuss with you, starting off with incidents and accidents this morning. We're then going to take a look at the dangers of electricity from actual electric components. So any DB boards that you're perhaps working with. I know a lot of you plumbers out there say that we are plumbers and electricians. So we'd like to see a little bit more of the electrical side as well. So we'll take a look at electrical tools as well, portable electrical tools, grinders, drills, electrical extensions, etc. Then we're also going to be looking at Arrive Alive. So this month, obviously, driving to work, driving back from work on the roads. We're pretty much out of lockdown, which means that a lot more people are on the roads. And I'm sure it's getting very frustrating for you, getting back into the whole routine of getting out of the state of disaster means there's a lot more vehicles on the road, going back to how it used to be. But with a change, and I'm sure you've seen the change, people are different coming out of lockdown. The way we drive our vehicles, the way people drive around us is pretty much just for themselves. There is no courtesy or hardly any that we are seeing on the roads. And so the roads have become extremely dangerous. People are more volatile. And getting to and from certain places has become very, very dangerous. And so we want to encourage you to arrive alive by doing a few things to keep yourself calm while you are driving and also try and avoid incidents on the road. We also know coming up is our winter months. And so we want to chat to you about some cold months and the risks and hazards that you will face when it is getting cold. I think I should have put this on today because it already seems like it's getting pretty cold right early in April already. But let's get started for this morning. Section 24 of the Occupational Health and Safety Act tells about reportable incidents. So a reportable incident is an incident or accident where somebody was injured to a degree that they are going to be off work for more than 14 days. They were knocked unconscious. There was a spill of a substance or there was a release of a substance under pressure. And so there's a few criteria that needs to be met to become a reportable incident. Now, reportable means that you report it to the Department of Labor. This does not mean you don't have to report other incidents and accidents to your employer. And so we just want to chat to you about reporting incidents and accidents, why it's so important to keep records to ensure that you report it in the correct method, and then also take you through what incidents and accidents are and what you are currently facing as plumbers. But let's take a look at a few things. First of all, we want to look at an accident. An accident means an accident arising out of and in the course of an employee's employment or resulting in a personal injury or illness or the death of an employee. Then hazard means the source of or exposure to danger. Healthy means free from illness or injury attributable to occupational causes. So healthy means free from illnesses that come from diseases that arise out of occupational disease. Now, when we speak about this, we're talking about a disease that, like COVID-19, has become an occupational disease. And so according to the hazardous biological agents regulations, we need to ensure that our workplace is COVID-free. And if somebody does get COVID through the workplace, it can be attributable to an occupational cause. Then HIRA is hazard identification and risk assess. So we know this, we speak about HIRA or risk assessments all the time. Now, an incident means an incident as contemplated in section 24.1, including other less serious or minor incidents, and therefore used as a generic term. So we just want to chat to you about this. Section 24 of the Occupational Health and Safety Act tells us that there are certain incidents that must be reported. It leaves out quite a lot of other incidents and accidents that happen that are less serious or minor. And these do not need to be reported to the Department of Labor. And so the mindset then is, well, we don't need to report these because they are not serious. But it's not that they are not serious. And when we say they're minor incidents, we do understand that it is not as bad or as serious as certain incidents and accidents out there. People are dying on site because of serious incidents and accidents. But first aid incidents are still incidents that could be avoidable. So if you are working on site and you accidentally cut yourself, perhaps you're using a blade or a knife to be able to open packaging before you start installing something. Perhaps you got all of your equipment in cardboard boxes or plastic wrapped, and you need to open this, and you cut yourself open with a Stanley knife. Off you go to the first aider, you get sorted out by the first aider, and you continue working. This type of incident could end up in something more severe. You know, the more people get injured, the more people get cut. What about cross-contamination between what you've cut with your Stanley knife and then how you cut yourself? So let's give you a scenario. We have a plumber working on a site. He has his trusty toolbox, a toolbox that he's had for many years. He knows how to work with these tools. They've even formed themselves to the way he works. So the handles that he uses, or even the types of tools that a plumber will use, he or she would then know how to handle those tools in a specific time. And so cutting with a Stanley knife becomes a regular feature for this plumber, especially when he's working with waste pipes. So he needs to cut open packaging and constantly work. And while working with this, he cuts something with waste pipes where there's biological agents. And so waste or refuse that is coming out there is now on the actual tool. And then he cuts himself. What would you say is the possibility that that cut or that injury will become infected? Well, there's a very high possibility because there's cross-contamination between where he's working and what he's working with and the injury that he has sustained. So we need to understand that the consequences of injuries and accidents sometimes go beyond what actually happens. And so that infection could lead to more serious incidents, such as getting flu-like symptoms, thinking, well, it's just normal flu, or hopefully it's not COVID, but it could be a virus or an infection in the person's body. Now you take off sick leave. Yes, your employer has to pay you sick leave. You get a doctor's note and you're off work. But is that really what you want? Well, asking any person when they are sick, do you want to be sick? The answer is always the same. No, they do not want to be sick. Asking someone, would you like to be off work and paid without being sick? Well, of course, everybody would love that. Taking off work, especially for holidays and vacations and still getting paid, is absolutely awesome. You get paid without working, but that is not sustainable. And in the economy that we live in, nobody can afford to work without getting paid, and nobody can afford to take off and still get paid. And so when we take a look at incidents and accidents, such a small thing, you don't have to report that cut to the Department of Labor. But what are the consequences of something like that happening? Getting injured, getting ill because of the type of cut, it becomes a first aid case. It's noted on the first aid register. And if nothing gets done, there's no follow-up to that, well, it could potentially happen again. And something we also want to remind you of is it happens to you and it's a closed incident to yourself because you working, it happens, maybe often, but there are hundreds of plumbers out in the industry. And if it happened to every single one of them often, we are talking about thousands of incidents and accidents happening every day. So statistically, looking at minor, less serious incidents and accidents, these are happening a lot more than the accidents that have to be reported. So what do you need to actually look at? When it comes to incidents and accidents, there are two words I want you to remember: risk and safe. Risk means the probability that injury or damage will occur. Now, we know what hazard is. That's the source. That's the exposure to danger. And so in this scenario, the actual use of a sharp blade becomes the exposure to danger. A sharp blade on its own will not cause any injury, but using that sharp blade now becomes an act that could potentially become hazardous or unsafe. Now, risk means the probability that injury or damage will occur. And so probability means with the amount of time that I use that blade, what is the chances percentage-wise that I will cut myself after using it for 10 hours? And so we use a little bit of an algorithm with the type of work you do, the type of scope of work you're performing, where you're actually using that blade. Is it on a ladder? Is it at heights? Is it in a confined space? All of that does affect the probability or the percentage that it could, or the chances are of you cutting yourself. And now what we want to do is make it safe. So we want to make it free from any hazard. And so being trained on the use of a blade might seem funny to you, and well, that's pretty unnecessary. But is it unnecessary if we find that people are constantly cutting themselves? Well, no, then you can see the benefits of having training around that use of tool. So what we want to just let you know is the risk is not always 100% guaranteed. We always want to look at the probability. What are the chances? What is the likelihood of you getting injured? And then we minimize that. We want to take that probability down to the lowest possible probability. Now, let's say that the chances were only 5% that you could cut yourself with a knife, with that sharp blade rather. If it was only 5%, you could say to yourself, well, that probability is very low. That's reasonable and acceptable to me. I'm going to continue working. But what if we had some sort of safe working procedure? It wasn't something that you had to purchase. It was just an extra 5 minutes of your time every day to remind yourself about the use of blades. And if you could do that, we could minimize that probability down to 1%. Would you say that's better? Or would you say, well, it's only 4% less than what I'm currently having. 4% is not really a lot. And again, you're looking at it for yourself. Let's take 100 plumbers out in the industry, all working today on Tuesday, all working with a blade, cutting something. If we could have all those 100 plumbers implement something that could bring down the probability to a 1% probability, that means 4 plumbers today will not cut themselves. Does that put that percentage in a bit more perspective for you? Does it allow you to see how important it is, that 3 or 4%, 5%? That might seem little to you, but overall, let's say there are 1,000 plumbers working today, all of them with a 5% chance of getting injured. Now that is a lot more than just 5 persons. 1,000 people working is now 50 people getting injured. Imagine we could bring that down to only 10. That is 40 people that you could potentially save from an incident or an accident. So yes, the percentages mean a lot because we try and bring that risk down to the lowest possible chances. Now, when incidents or accidents happen, there are a few things that must be done. 2 of these is to record and report and record. So the 2 things that you must do, first of all, you have to record what has actually happened. And if it is a reportable incident, then you record the incident and you have to report the incident as well. So let's take a look at each of these. Recording is just any incident, regardless of its severity. So this is near misses, minor injuries, first aid injuries, right up to reportable incidents, so major ones, catastrophic ones. All of this has to be recorded. And we use a document called an Annexure 1. This is from the Department of Labor. It's a GAR or General Administrative Regulation document. It's a 2-page document that just asks you to record what has actually happened. And it's a great tool to identify where risks are creeping through our safety management system. And so when the person responsible for health and safety, the risk assessor, incident and accident investigator takes a look at these documents, they will then start seeing a pattern. And these indexes of where things are likely to go wrong, what is actually happening, what are the statistical analysis of where is an incident occurring, why is the incident occurring, and what can we do to prevent the incident from occurring. That tool of a 2-page document really assists incident investigators to stop things from happening again. So if you think to yourself that 4% wasn't a lot, and now you see the difference between 1,000 people working and 40 people not being injured, you can just see the expansion of incidents and accidents that could potentially become more harmful in the future. And we're just talking about one simple blade. There's a lot more things that you as plumbers are doing that are very dangerous. Working at heights, for one, lifting heavy tools or machinery, perhaps JoJo tanks or things like that. They might not be super heavy, but very awkward in certain times. Then we look at recording and reporting. So recording, again, same document. You have to use an Annexure 1. But there might be an additional document. This could be an incident investigation document. That's another record that you have to keep. But the reporting structure is what we want to do in this section. So Section 24 says you have to report this to the Department of Labor. And the Department of Labor requires you to not just record it on an Annexure 1, but to report them using the correct forms. Now, it depends on who you're with. If you're with FEM, you'll use an FEM form. If you're with Department of Labor, you'll use a WCL form. And generally, whoever you've registered with Coetzee will have a specific outline or a specific methodology of reporting that claim. Now, with the Department of Labor, they've got the Coetzee website. Coetzee means compensation made easy. And so when you want to claim for compensation, specifically when it's coming to medical assistance, then you have to log onto the website, have a user registered, and then fill in a WCL document online and issue them with your letter of good standing, the person's ID document, your first medical report, etc., depending on the stages of your actual incident. Now, why do we have the reporting section? Well, it's for two reasons. For one, it gives the Department of Labor a good idea of what is happening in the industry. What are the types of incidents and accidents occurring? And then what is the category of employee where it's happening? So if you notice that on a construction site, it's a lot more dangerous than working in an office. Well, why is that? Well, there's a lot more hazards. There's a lot more risks on a construction site. And so that category of employee becomes a high risk area. And this is based on the amount of incidents and accidents that occur. The Department of Labor notifies this. They realize and understand that that category in construction is very dangerous. And so they bring out an entire regulation specifically to construction. And so the construction regulations that came out in 2014 are now designed to protect people from incidents and accidents because it's high risk work. We then look at things like working with asbestos. Before, it wasn't a very huge thing. Then it became taboo to work with asbestos. You're not allowed to work with asbestos. You have to be an approved inspection authority to work with asbestos. And you have to ensure that all documents are in place. Why? Because it causes cancer. So it's a very high risk and dangerous work. So a regulation came out for asbestos work. Now, we're not too sure what is going to come out in the future, but all of these reporting structures help the Department of Labor to identify criteria of employees where it becomes high risk. And so we want to protect those who do that work in the future. The second reason for reporting is to ensure that the person who gets injured gets the proper medical care that they deserve. And so companies don't have the money to spend hundreds of thousands of rands for a person in hospital, especially still paying them a salary, still continuing to work, and then paying for medical bills, which is not cheap. That is why they ask you to report it, to claim from the Department of Labor or that insurance fund that you've paid into, and allow the person who's injured to be able to claim from that. So the Annexure 1 form, as we mentioned, the investigation on how incidents and accidents happen should officially start within 7 days of any incident or accident occurring and must be finalized as soon as is reasonably practical. This means that what you want to try and do is finish any incident investigation as soon as possible so that you can record and report back to the Department of Labor. Now, an employer must ensure that the incident, the record, be examined by the Health and Safety Committee. The Health and Safety Committee is made up of your health and safety representatives. Now, if you only have one health and safety representative and you don't have a health and safety committee, well, then these records must be examined by the employer, whoever is responsible for health and safety, and your health and safety representative. If you are less than 20 people and you don't even have a health and safety rep, then the employer is responsible for ensuring they examine these incident records. Now, an Annexure 1 means recording an investigation of incidents, and it must be kept for 3 years. So if you don't have this document, it's a very simple document. You can download it off the web. You can send us an email and we'll send it back to you as well. It's just a normal 2-page document, and you must keep it for a minimum of 3 years. Now, the investigation should be performed by one of the following persons. So an investigation is what happened, how did it happen, and how can it be prevented? Please note that you should go on incident investigation training if you want to do the investigation, because we never want to look for blame. We're not looking for the person that's responsible. We're looking for what happened and how can we prevent it from happening. So we must not be biased when we're doing investigations. So 4 persons are allowed to actually perform this investigation: the employer himself or herself, the person who was using the machinery that caused the incident or accident, a person appointed by the employer to investigate the incident. This is a GAR 9 legal appointment. A health and safety representative of the workplace, that's a Section 17 person, or a health and safety committee, or a member of the health and safety committee, which is, in essence, is the actual health and safety representative. But also a member of the health and safety committee could be a senior manager who's been appointed as a member of that actual committee. So just take a look at Section 17, 18, 19, and 20 of the OHS Act to see how SHE-REPs and health and safety committees are set up. If you want some more information about that also, we can definitely assist you. Now, when it comes to WCL forms, as we mentioned, Section 24 states certain incidents and accidents must be reported. So you have to ensure that reportable incidents and accidents are reported, and there's certain criteria that it must be met. You must follow the correct reporting procedure, and you must use the correct forms in the correct time frame. So if you want to know how to do this, check, are you registered with the Department of Labor, FEM, or Rand Mutual? And then follow their procedures. In the Prime course that we are launching, we are going to take you through a step-by-step procedure on registering with the Department of Labor, claiming for the Department of Labor, and how to fill in a WCL2 form as well. Now, when we said earlier, who can report an incident? It's a employer or a user. So who then actually reports it? Well, you have to report an incident or accident using the correct form. Either the employer does it or the user of machinery. So on the left-hand side here, you've got a forklift. And if that user of the forklift injured someone, they have to report that incident or accident. The employer is also legally allowed to do that. Now, if you're an employee and you were the user of that plant or machinery, you have an obligation to ensure that that incident or accident is reported, either by yourself or by your employer. So remember, any incident that falls within Section 24, that is anything that occurs directly out of or in connection with your work, must be reported to the provincial director within 7 days. Obviously, if somebody dies, that should happen immediately. But most reportable incidents and accidents must be reported within 7 days. Now, if the injured person after that 7-day period dies in the hospital, then you also need to notify the Department of Labor. So why do you report incidents and accidents? Well, remember what we said. Reporting can help in many ways. The injured person gets the help they need, the medical assistance that they need. Companies who do not have the funds can claim for healthcare from the Department of Labor for that injured person, and they can help with financial costs because you cannot afford those medical costs. Incident investigators can also see the incident and how it can be prevented. they can go through the investigation and then see the report on what happened to the individual and try and stop this from happening again. Then also, based on these incident reports, safety talks can be designed around actual on-site issues. This gives everybody a better understanding of what risks and hazards they are facing, putting everybody on the same page, which means you'll be more aware as the week progresses. Now, let's ask you a question. If something happened to you, would you want to get the help? Would you like to be protected from incidents and accidents? Now, what if something happened to you? What if something happened to you and you couldn't talk? You landed up in hospital, you're unconscious, and you weren't able to talk and ask for the assistance. Wouldn't you want somebody to be able to talk for you? Well, why not be the person you want to work with? If you see incidents and accidents and you know somebody needs assistance, speak up. Go to the employer. Ask them, has it been reported to the Department of Labor? Is those WCL forms in place? Is the person being given the necessary treatment that they deserve? Just recently, we've had an incident where a person was seriously injured. They broke their leg. It took them 6 weeks in and out of hospital, in and out of medical cares. It cost hundreds of thousands of rands that we obviously claimed from the Department of Labor so that it was off of the employer's responsibility. But not one person in the entire company, not even the employer, went or sent a message or phoned this employee. That employee was devastated. In fact, they left working there after that incident because they realized nobody was there for them. So we don't want to work in a situation like that. We don't want to be left alone when incidents and accidents happen. So follow the procedures, but do more than that. Be a human being. When somebody gets injured, be there for them, assist them, take them through the procedures. And if you don't know the procedures, and I'm speaking to employers, those of you who own these plumbing companies, if you don't know what to do, find out what to do. Get the assistance. You don't want to be left alone when an incident or accident occurs. So as we mentioned, our safety thought for this week and every week coming out, we want to encourage you to think safely. And so our safety thought for this week is accidents hurt, safety doesn't. We don't want you to have an incident or accident that could potentially cost you your life or somebody else's life that could be preventable. So coming up, obviously, we're looking at electricity, Arrive Alive, and also coming into the colder months. We want to say thank you very much for joining us this morning. We look forward to having you on our next Toolbox Talk next week. Just if anybody wants information on those documents, they can reach out to us. The email address is there on the left-hand side, safety@iopsa.org, info@ohss.co.za. Tell me what documents you need, what assistance you need, and give me your email address as well, please. And then I can send you that information.